All right, you guys. That's actually pretty dark. I'm going to apologize for that, for you guys tuning in via Periscope. That's the best we can do. Now, I'm not going to be able to see any of your questions, unfortunately, because I'm speaking live here. Sorry for the delay. We had some severe technical difficulty. Both PC and Mac difficulty. So let me pull this thing up and we'll get started. There you go. Keto Paleo. PowerPoint. U of M. All right. So, first of all, thank you guys all for coming. I really appreciate it. This one was definitely not without hurdles. Let me get this slideshow mode. Presenter mode. Okay, so.
Mirror your screen.
Oh, yeah. Project, extend, enter. We might not get away with. it, eh? Without some more.
Like do full screen, yeah. Yes. There you go.
I'll just do full screen. I won't use presenter mode. Okay, so thanks all for coming. All right, so I'm not a registered dietitian by the state of Michigan or anything like that. I'm a biologist. That's what I went to school for, so lucky for you guys. No, just joking. So anyway, that I have to say that is because I'm not allowed to prescribe diets. That's the big difference in this, okay? So I got my degree here from U of M, got myself a fancy little tie bar for this talk too, to help show my respect. So anyway, but I have to put this disclaimer out there just so you all know that I'm not a registered dietitian and I can't prescribe diets. I can only help coach you on them, technically. So that's the legalese. That's my lawyer's part out of the way. So some things I hope we could go over today. I do like to talk. I'm long-winded. We're going to go over basically how I stumbled across paleo and a ketogenic diet and where I came from. We're going to explain really what is a paleo diet and what is a ketogenic diet. They are two different ideologies, but they are two ideologies that mend well together, in my opinion. Okay, we're going to go over some of the basics, issues that people have or complaints with a paleo diet. Not complaints that I should say, but some of the reasons you don't eat grain, some of the reasons you don't eat dairy. We're going to go over some of the anti-nutrients, and we may go over them in a little bit of detail. We may not, depending on. I'll be looking at the crowd and if you're dozing off or not by then. So we're going to go over some of the mechanisms as to why people get fat or gain weight or add extra adipose tissue on, why some people can lose it very easily, why some people don't. We're also going to go over some of the beneficial things for performance, which is really my background and what drew me to paleo and keto. Actually, because at the time I really didn't think I was heavy until I started reeling this all in a little closer. We're going to talk about some of the hot topics with ketogenic diets. One of them right now, is it a cancer killer? And some of the thought processes behind why it may be. How it can help you. We're going to go over, at the end, how to be successful with one and a little bit how to put one together. I did put some sample diets out there as well, like an average paleo style diet and an average ketogenic style diet, okay? And how to merge the two together if you decide to take it to that point. And you can kind of decide where you're going to fall in there. We'll talk a little bit about how people talk about the difference between being in nutritional ketosis and the difference between being in ketoacidosis and what they're two separate things, okay? And like I said, I mentioned a little bit of meal planning. Then we're going to have a little bit of break. Holly's going to go over some of the work that she does. She's going to be talking about changing your diet more to a natural human diet for some mental disorders, anxiety and depression and stuff like that.
Any kind of mental health diagnosis, diet can help tremendously. So
yeah, which is really great because it's an area that I'm fascinated about and I haven't read much about it. I'm more on the biology end of performance and optimal health kind of thing. So that's going to be a great addition to this. So I am working on a book. You would not believe how hard and long that takes to do. Everyone says, you have a blog, just throw it together, you'll have a book. Not true, but that's really, really hoping to have that done the end of this year. I keep getting sidetracked, things like liver transplants and gyms flooding and stuff like that. Just kidding, honey, if you're watching. So, with that being said, let's start with where I started with all this. So the guy on the left is me. The guy on the right is me. The guy on the left didn't think there was a problem. Okay? He was a 250-pound competitive powerlifter, drug-free powerlifter, been a drug-free powerlifter my whole life. I figured I was on the straight and narrow. I was on the GFH diet, which is get effing huge. Okay, so everything I ate and saw, I was eating. Okay, because I figured eat big, lift big, right? And I was good. I stayed drug-free. I worked out. I was healthy. One day during a routine physical, my doctor looked at me and said, Jamie, there's a direct correlation between belly fat and heart disease. And I just about stopped in my tracks. And I was like, who's he talking to? What, he knows I work out. I have a very good relationship with my doctor, Now, I did eat good, but I ate everything. So there was the good and bad all smashed together. And like I said, I was trying to get as big as possible. So that kind of sunk home with me, okay? And then I'd always lifted weights in a powerlifting respect, not more in a metabolic conditioning respect like CrossFit or any type of running or anything like that. And one day in the gym, I had also said that, I'm going to try to get lean, you guys. I think I'm going to go back to get my six-pack like when I was in high school. And I just about got laughed out of the gym. Okay, that's how bad it was. And I was like, all right, well, how far gone am I? Because I was that typical guy that would look straight in the mirror, and I never did that profile thing to see how big my belly was, and then I caught a picture, something very similar to this, where actually my neck and head are the same size, and I got this Dunlap going over my pants, and then I was like, wow, that's not just the big chest I see. There's a big fat dude sitting there, and that can't be healthy. So that was another reason too. Okay, I had some humility there. So I had that, and I had my health, and then after that I had these guys. And we had these guys later in life. I was early 30s, and I decided that I want to be around longer for them. And not only do I want to be alive, because alive isn't necessarily living, but I want to be able to roll around on the floor, play, do all those things. I want to be able to play tag with my daughter at the park and not just be just a train wreck. I want to engage with my kids, not sit there and watch them like they're TV. Okay? I want to be the dad that goes up all the steps at the water park 100 times with them. Okay? So I decided to make that change, and they're not the only reason, but they're probably the tipping point. Okay? So here we go. You'll see the name if you've been to my webpage. It's ketopaleo.com. There's two different ideologies here, and then I'm going to stress this a couple of times because I think I've missed that in previous lectures. The paleo diet is more considered a natural human diet and or what you would call a hunter-gatherer diet and or something that you would find in the wild. Anything that you could hunt or gather during our evolution or the Paleolithic era is kind of how they ballpark it. If you were buck naked on the savannas of Africa and had a rock and a stone and a stick, what could you eat? Okay? A ketogenic diet, on the other hand, is a manipulation of your macromolecules, which if you guys don't know what your macromolecules are, if you look at the back of a package, it'll say fat, carbohydrate, and protein. You manipulate those in such a way that you switch your metabolic design from running off a glucose molecule to metabolizing fat or ketone bodies. Okay, so one's a grocery list, one's a manipulation of percentages, sometimes total grams, of fat, carbohydrate, and protein. It's usually very low carbohydrate, and this varies for people depending on your insulin sensitivity. Moderate protein, almost always, and that actually spans across all diets. Almost everybody stays in the moderate protein level. It's usually the carbohydrate fat thing that we offset, okay, and a higher fat diet, okay? Just want to be very clear that those are two that I have smashed together. Okay, so what is a paleo diet? A paleo diet is a natural human diet or a hunter-gatherer diet. Meat, fruit, veggies, nuts, and seeds. Okay? There's no processed food, there's no dairy, there's no legumes, no grains, no tubers. And we'll go over a little bit why as we get through some of these slides, as why there's no dairy, why there's no grains, no tubers kind of thing. Because there's little aspects of both that get marketed as the healthy part, but the negative part is always left out. It's like saying, I know a great source of nicotine. Right, it's a great stimulant, but the baggage that it comes with, you know. Benefits of paleo, and these are some of the ones that I've noticed right away. You're healthier. Less inflammation in your body. That actually has a lot to do with the sugar content and elevated insulin levels. Better profile, cholesterol and sugar comes down, usually because it's a lower carb diet. I'm not going to say it's a low carb diet, but it's a lower carb diet because you can manipulate it however you want, hence the adjusting your macromolecules. You usually experience, if you're living off a standard American diet, you usually experience some weight loss, and hauling around that extra weight isn't always to our advantage. You recover faster, and one of the reasons you recover faster is there's actually less damage going on. It's to say you recover faster is actually a little bit misleading, and what you're really doing is less damage. There's less oxidative stress because you have less elevated sugar level, or you have lower sugar levels, lower elevated. Sorry, guys. So you actually cause less damage, and it appears that you recover faster. It's going to be one of the points that I bring up with a ketogenic diet, too, when we get to that. Okay, so what are grains, first of all? Wheat, rice, oats, and however you want to pronounce quinoa, quinoa, however. The fancier you pronounce it, the fancier you are. Barley, corn, millet, rye. A lot of lack of vitamins. You'll see that if you flip over that loaf of bread, that they say it's vitamin enriched, which that basically means is they took a loaf of bread and ground up a multivitamin with it. It is man's first processed food. It's one of the first things that we came across that was man's first processed food. It's a huge sugar load, is really what it comes down to. There's not a lot of fat, there's not a lot of protein, and if you're one of those people that are dealing with insulin issues or diabetes, stuff of that nature, that's one thing that you're going to want to avoid, is because it's going to be a large sugar load on you. The digestible form of that is going to be glucose by the time it gets to your small intestine. Whether it's the fanciest bread you can find, or just, regular old Wonder Bread. It contains a lot of anti-nutrients. Grains contain a lot of anti-nutrients, which we're going to comb over here real quick. I found this graph. I do believe it's out of one of Cordain's book. Lauren Cordain, who wrote Paleo Diet, Paleo Answer, and a couple of other books. I can't exactly remember where I got this one, but this kind of gives you a snapshot of naturally occurring vitamin content in some of the things. And you can see down near the end that meats actually have a lot higher vitamin content than a lot of whole grains, even some fruits and veggies. And I can email this to you guys if you guys end up wanting it. Just email me at jamie@keto-paleo.com. If you see anything in here that I don't have as a handout out there that you want, just let me know. I'll send it to you and I'll let you know the source. Okay? So these are the anti-nutrients we are looking at. We're looking at lectins, phytates, alkaloids, goitrogens, gluten, and saponins. A lot of you are familiar with gluten. That seems to be a buzzword in this day and age, and we'll cover a little bit about that right now. phytates. They're found in most grains, and what they are is they'll actually bind with certain minerals like calcium and magnesium and zinc and help make it hard for your body to absorb in your digestive tract. Okay, so one of the arguments that they make in that paleo camp is that osteoporosis never existed in the Paleolithic era. It wasn't until we got into the modern Neolithic era where we started eating grains and farming and started having some of these anti-nutrients introduced into our diet, stopping absorption of calcium and stuff like that. And you'll notice that even though this is a known biological thing, what is the first thing that people are trying to do? Okay, so women are depleted in calcium. They don't address the problem. They try to sell you calcium. Why? Because a lot of times it's a follow the money kind of thing. Same kind of mechanisms with some of the vitamin D absorption and metabolism, blocking a lot of the receptors, allowing for vitamin D absorption, A, C, B12. Ooh, that was nice. If you are eating a lot of these grains and you find yourself nutrient deficient, that might be one thing that you want to look at. Which a lot of people, I'll fast forward a little bit here, a lot of people ask me about taking multivitamins and stuff like that, and I'm a big fan of making sure you have all your natural vitamins and stuff like that, because modern factory farm foods don't have a lot of them, okay? Because we use a lot of petroleum-based fertilizers to make stuff grow all the way up, and there's no vitamin enrichment anymore. And people ask me if I'm a fan of vitamins, and yeah, there's a few vitamins that I take too, and I'm a fan of it. But I'm also a fan of getting some type of nutrient evaluation done first. I don't believe in blindly taking something. So like we brought up vitamin D, and we're going to talk about that a little bit here in a few slides. You know, a big buzz right now is everyone's vitamin D deficient. And a lot of people probably are, especially up north where we're at. But a perfect example of that is my buddy's wife comes home from the doctor. She had the blood test. I'm vitamin D deficient. Okay, that's great. And she said, we need to start taking vitamin D. He was a construction worker. He was outside all day, every day. And I said, you might want to have the same test done, because you're outside all day, every day, and one of the natural ways of producing vitamin D is through the chemical reaction through our skin. As a matter of fact, there's 13 other phytonutrients that get developed with sun touching our skin. So to just single out the one, cubicle worker, construction worker, might not be the best route. Goitrogens is another thing found in legumes or beans. It's an anti-thyroid agent. Okay, so there's a lot of things. It's more like a little pesticide built into beans. So people ask me, well, how come beans aren't on there? Well, they do have a low glycemic index or sugar response because there's a lot of fiber in them and even protein. But again, like my nicotine comment, there might be some other things going on there. Remember beans, the musical fruit, the more you eat, the more you toot. That's one of those things that your digestive system is reacting to something that it's not supposed to have. Lectins and alkaloids found in most grains, beans, and lentils. Okay, I'm sorry. This is the lectins and the alkaloids. They're kind of like a built-in pesticide. And I don't mean a GMO-style pesticide. I mean something naturally occurring in these plants. Back in the day, millions of years ago, when it was plants versus animals, this was one of their defense mechanisms. One of the things that can actually cause is a lot of leaky gut. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that term, where you perforate the walls of your intestine. You know, there's a slimy layer and a glycocalyx that lines the sides of your intestines and actually a lot of your cell walls. If that can get permeated, then these things can pass through that normally wouldn't. And when these things pass through that normally wouldn't, it builds an autoimmune response to them. And when you build an autoimmune response to some of these things that pass through that aren't inherently there, you get autoimmune diseases. And some of the reasons you get autoimmune diseases is the protein mimicry part. Okay, I'm going really fast, I know, but there's a lot of information here. And cellular mimicry, what happens is, and let's talk really broad brush here, some of these proteins pass this barrier and get in your blood system. Like my dad had rheumatoid arthritis really bad, and not the pinnacle of health, let me tell you. He had rheumatoid arthritis, and he had, one of the big ideas here is that the proteins pass that barrier, you create an autoimmune response to it. It also looks like something in your home team or your own joints, okay? So all of a sudden, your autoimmune system is attacking these foreign antigens, but they're also attacking parts of your own body or things that look like those familiar proteins to it, or the ones that have created a defense mechanism in a sense, and all of a sudden you get inflammation, okay, because your body is attacking itself. Gluten, this is a real popular one right now with celiac disease and other autoimmune disorders. I really think that the reason that you hear so much about this is that they found a way to sell you stuff that was gluten-free. Back to the calcium thing, they found a way to sell you something that has what you don't need. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people benefiting from this, but at the same time, a lot of these things are still a huge carb load, causing a lot of insulin resistance, causing elevated insulin levels, inflammation, high sugar levels, all the things that go along with it.
Do you include like quinoa in those?
Yeah, that was one of the ones I put on there, grain-like subjects, is because they follow under that same camp. Different levels of different degrees. Some have more anti-nutrients, some are more of an insulin response. That's right, so if one's lower in fiber, one may have more anti-nutrients. Tubers, all right, so this is one that you'll see. I wrote on our blog post a while back called The 50 Shades of Paleo, okay? And this is all right, so you have these ideologies that people are taking and running with, and they're tweaking them a little bit for their advantage, okay? So a lot of the athletes will say, I'm going to throw in, sweet potatoes or yams or anything like that because I feel I need that extra carb load or replenishment or something like that. But in reality, a lot of these tubers carry a high level of saponins, okay? And that's almost, saponin's like a soap-like subject that'll help, again, deteriorate some of those linings, some of those intestinal wall linings, also some of the cell wall integrity. Your cell walls are composed of a lipid bilayer, which is a fat. And much like dropping Dawn dish soap into a sink that has a layer of fat on the top, it can permeate and bust holes in that too. Dr. Cordain's Paleo Answer has a really good illustration of how that happens at a chemical level if you guys want to read a little bit more about that. Back to that anyway. One of the other arguments is, okay, so potatoes were around and there are some cultures that, harvest roots and potatoes and stuff like that, and a lot of people have made that argument before that, oh yeah, they've been there, and maybe they were eating them raw, but in order to hydrolyze that carbohydrate so it's useful, you'd have to cook it, and we haven't had controlled fire, at least for the last 10,000 years, which is like a fraction of our evolutionary timeline, okay? That's like 99.9, it's the 0.1 out of that. So a lot of people ask, where do I get my carbs and vitamins? Because they're so programmed by the bread and cereal aisles saying fortified this, fortified that, all that kind of stuff. There's a produce aisle over there that has stuff that except for maybe a handful of us in this room, don't even know what they are by looking at it. I take my kids through these things, and we just walk the perimeter. And I said, do you guys know what that is? Do you guys know what that is? Do you guys? Nope. And unless it's apple, strawberry, grapes, a lot of people are very limited to, this thing or the other thing. So there's a great source. Some people argue, we'll go back to this paleo thing, hunter-gatherer diet. Could you pull it off as some type of vegetarian kind of thing? By definition, you could be more gatherer than hunter, and you maybe be able to pull it off. Not that I condone that, because I think you do need meat and saturated fat for a lot of your processes, but you could be more gatherer than hunter and get away with it. Trouble with dairy. So, let's roll back the clock again and put you in that buck naked on the savannas of Africa. And you ever heard of these aurochs, or whatever they call of a primal cow with horns. And the argument is that you could have milked these things. Okay, buck naked, savannas of Africa, herd of things with horns, 2,000 pounds. No bucket either, remind you. So if you want milk, you know where you're going for it. I don't think it happened. It wasn't part of our evolutionary trait. And there's a lot of things that come along with that baggage. Okay, so there's a big percentage of us out there that can't even break down the lactose, which is another sugar in milk. Okay, they have a lot of people that are lactose intolerant. There's a handful of us out there on the world spectrum, most of us European descent, that can break down that lactose. But then here we go again. What are we breaking it down to? Lactose breaks down into glucose and galactose. Okay, so you're having another elevated sugar thing. Okay, I've heard the term before, skim milk, being called white pop before, which is a great description of it, because basically that's what you're getting. Okay, and let's think about what this is. Okay, we're going to talk about some of the problems with. I got it on another slide. So, some of the insulin response again. I'm going to notice a big trend in here. I'm going to talk a lot about insulin response because I think that's the 2,000-pound gorilla in the room. Okay, it's problems with our society right now. So I'll bring up a lot of things pointing towards insulin response. When people have certain forms of dairy, they may not get a high glycemic index or a lot of blood glucose, okay? But they may in fact actually get an insulin response to that dairy, okay? So if I have a lot of my members at the gym that start down that paleo pathway, and they're keeping, even if it's like raw milk or anything of that nature in there, and they're having some troubles still with allergies and autoimmune responses and stuff of that nature, a lot of time I'll say, well, why don't we reel it in and take the dairy out and see what happens? And a lot of times people will really, really accelerate after that point, even if it's a regular ketogenic diet. So I want to try keto because I want to have cheese and make porchos and pizzas and stuff like that. I'll say let's reel the dairy out. Let's see what happens. Give me, I always say 6 months, and their jaw usually drops. But that's really what it takes, is 6 months. I don't know where everyone came up with 6 weeks, but it takes about 6 months for stuff to really reel back in. And some people are really insulin sensitive. Some people aren't. And sometimes this is it. Even though on paper it's not a huge glucose, doesn't raise their blood level very high, it may in fact be spiking their insulin. This I did get from one of Lauren's books. Okay, so some of the proteins in milk, like we brought up before, have autoimmune stimulating properties in it. Our intestinal wall is already perforated for whatever reason. We have all these chemicals in our system, and or the saponins or the other anti-nutrients who perforated it. Now some of these proteins are passing this barrier that they normally wouldn't get to, and you have some more autoimmune stimulating things. There's a lot of research being done right now, and actually Dr. Keith Runyon, who I had the pleasure of meeting on the 2015 low-carb cruise, has done a lot of research showing how this actually affects for type 1 diabetes. If you haven't heard or read any of his literature and you're interested in people being affected, especially kids with type 1 diabetes, I would look that up. IGF-1, which is a growth hormone. Okay, so let's go back to what milk is. Okay, milk is essentially filtered blood, right? Okay, so mom is going to create this magic liquid to make their baby grow as fast as possible. Why? So it can run, get out of the way, grow, be healthy. Survival of the species. We do that for our own babies. Okay, cows do it for their own babies. So we get all the good immune system properties to help it fight disease, and we also get all of our growth hormone. Reel that into a 2,000-pound, 3,000-pound bovine doing the same exact thing for its baby. Now you're taking bovine or cow or whatever you want to say growth hormone and adding it to you. And a lot of times I say, and you wonder why you can't lose weight. There's a lot of growth factor in there. If you have any type of cancer proliferating, you are adding a growth hormone to that same scenario. Does that make sense? When you think of it that way, you're kind of like, wow, there's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, right, that's really what milk is, you know. Okay, the vitamin D argument. Okay, we mentioned a minute ago that vitamin D is typically generated by the sun, you know, through your skin. There's a chemical process. It actually involves up to 13 other phytonutrients that your body needs for other metabolic pathways. So one of the big arguments is that we need about 2,000 international units of vitamin D a day, okay, to be healthy. So if you break that down into how much milk you'd have to drink, and this is fortified glasses of milk, it'd be about 20 glasses, which would be about 5,600 calories. That would be just from your milk consumption. Okay, there's a lot of good marketing done around milk mustache thing, all that kind of thing. But the reality is, it's vitamin D's in it, but a lot of times it's added to it. And if you were using like natural raw milk, I wanted to say something, I did the math once, it was something like 56 glasses of milk or something like that. It was something insane. It's a huge, huge way. So, you know, back to that argument, should you be out in the sun more? Yes. Did we ever evolve outside buck naked for millions of years? Yes. Well, what about northern climates? We didn't evolve up here. That's part of the other argument. We didn't evolve in Michigan. We moved to Michigan, okay? We're somewhere along the equator, right? So yes, you could make that argument. And so again, back to the vitamin testing. Should you get a nutrient evaluation done if you decide you're going to take some type of vitamin? Yeah, probably. And when it comes to this one, I would probably do it seasonally. I would check around January or February, and I would check around August to see where you really fall in there. This is the one that you usually get blasphemy for. Low pressure type 2B bulbs at your local tanning booth, 7 minutes 3 times a week, does about the same thing. Then you get the full chemical reaction as well, and you get the other 13 phytonutrients.
And what about sunscreen?
Okay, so we're a very vitamin D deficient society that's produced by sun that we're blocking. Who's selling you something? Now I can't make the argument that it's not gonna not make you pretty over time. Okay, I can't argue that you being out in the sun all day, every day, you're not going to look like a Plains Indian from back in the time. But again, that's not our evolution. That pretty thing is something society slapped on us. So technically, you could probably cover your face with a sunscreen if beauty was your longevity thing, and get sun exposure on the rest of your body.
I can add something.
Yeah, please do.
So sunscreen is a question that people have a lot, and it's a very valid question because people, like my husband, burn super easily. If you are going to use sunscreen, there are safer options out there, especially zinc oxide sunscreens. They're more of a topical versus a chemical that absorbs into your body and can cause hormonal disruption. So look for zinc oxide sunscreens, or you can just Google like safer sunscreens. And there's a lot of options out there that will still give you that protection and keep you from burning, which I do think is important. You know,
burning is, yeah.
You shouldn't be burning. So look for those safer sunscreens, and then also just covering up while you're outside is also another good option. But I'm not an advocate of slathering the Neutrogena chemical-based sunscreen all over your body.
So that brings up a good point. Michigan again. January, can't take it anymore. We're going to Cancun. That's again another scenario that's not part of our evolutionary thing. We stayed in a hemisphere that was warm, sunny. You know, we didn't pale up like this. Length of day changed, and that's it. We didn't hide inside. So, like Holly said, avoiding burning is great. So if I said, you know, no sunscreen versus burning to a crisp, I'd say put on some sunscreen because a burn is really bad for you. Okay, damaging the largest organ we have is a bad idea. Okay, so you got to weigh your options. creeping up your tan before you go onto low pressure B level bulbs or whatever may not be a bad idea. Listening to your body, I've been in the sun too long, I better get out, is an even better idea because that's where the pain and the burn starts to come from. Hey, get out of the sun. But we don't live in that world anymore. But we have that framework, that blueprint that we're dealing with. Okay.
So if you're wearing clothes, like long sleeve shirts, outside, are you getting enough sun for vitamin D?
It depends.
The recommended amount for a good exposure is 10 to 20 minutes a day outside in I'd say 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
10 to 2 p.m. is our solar.
Just, exposing your face and your arms, and if you can expose more of your body, that's good. But just getting 20 minutes a day can do wonders for you.
And that can be full arms kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't have to be that. You don't have to go streaking through the neighborhood or anything like that. So, all right, so one of the questions is, how do you know this is what we ate? You weren't there. Where do you get this menu? And there's archaeologists, in particular, at the Department of Human Evolution at the Max Planck Institute in Germany. What they actually do, I think I lost my, here it is. What they actually do is they'll take and analyze, let's say, a cow's diet from that same evolutionary period. And then they'll analyze, say, a wolf from that same evolutionary period. And they'll look at the bone structure isotopes in those animals. And then they'll find out where exactly we are in that circle as far as composition of our, at a cellular level or an isotope level in our bone structure. And a lot of times what they'll find is, they'll know the plants of that era, and they'll also know the animals and the fats and everything like that, also the era from lots and lots of research. And then comparing the two bone structures between the two, that's kind of how they come to that conclusion. That's the science behind what did we actually eat? How do you know what we actually ate? Coming back to the cow scenario, a lot of people say when we come to sweeteners, people just being argumentative because I bring up the insulin response a lot. Well, we had honey. Yes, we did. We had bees too. And you were buck naked. And you were walking towards the hive. How much honey do you think? Was sweet tooth and even an idea then? Oh, thanks. That's all right. It's dark. People are probably complaining anyway because it's dark. That one's, I think, just flat burned out. So, lucky me. I guess it got worse. So, that's just one of the ways that they've deducted some of that analysis. So, on to the next phase of this. How do we get fat? Okay, there's that guy again, 250-pound power lifter, neck and head the same size again. How do we get fat? So if you guys have heard of something called the glycemic index, how eating a particular food will spike your blood sugar to a certain level, okay? That's usually a sign. There was a system that was designed a while back based on a benchmark food, which I think it was white bread. And then after that, they did a whole bunch of readings. I think it was up to 100 people after that. And they compared different things and assigned a number to those things. So you can see some of the common foods we eat here. And some of the ones that you probably previously was marketed as healthy alternatives. And you can see where they rate on that glycemic index. Okay, so one of the problems is that sugar is actually toxic at high levels in our body. And we have elevated sugar in our body eating a big bowl of whatever type of cereal. I've done really good this whole thing, not mentioning a company name so far. I'm not going to screw it up now. A big bowl of whatever sugar-based cereals will raise your blood sugar to a really high level. Okay, so then what happens is your body releases a hormone called insulin. And insulin will go and try and tuck and hide some of this blood sugar in different things. It'll look to your organs. It'll see what needs to be fed. It'll look towards muscle cells. It'll see what needs to be fed. And it'll look toward what fat cells and what if they need to be fed or filled back up for storage, because your body's not dumb. Remember, you came from this hunter-gatherer species. who spent most of its time starving. Okay? So your body will take the rest of it and try and store it. And some of us who are very insulin resistant, your body will release more insulin. And the longer your body is releasing insulin, reacting to the meal that you ate, will keep it from releasing any of its stored energy from your fat cells. Okay? So if you have someone who is really insulin sensitive, say they eat a big bowl of sugary whatever, and one drop of insulin's released, and all of a sudden all the blood sugar is gone. Other folks, and a lot of times this is genetically predisposed, can dump a ton of insulin and have insulin levels elevated for hours trying to deal with that sugar. Okay? Unfortunately, though, like I said before, it inhibits from any type of fat from being released. So, also, over time, some of us can become more insulin resistant. Okay? You hear very commonly, when I was a kid, I could eat whatever I wanted. Okay? Over time, I'm putting on weight. And it's almost accepted. Okay? I'm 30, I have a little bit of pudge. I'm 40, I have a little bit more pudge. I'm 50, well, I'm 50. There's no more argument anymore. It's becoming accepted as just something that happens. And a lot of times what happens over time is you've just beat down the beta cell receptors on some of our cells that react to this insulin. So when you used to be able to eat one candy bar, your body would, say, produce X, let's say, 3 units of insulin. And I'm just using numbers to use numbers here. As you get older and keep bombarding your body with these candy bars, because every time you turn around there was a reason to celebrate, or every time you walk through your break room there was a cake there, you keep elevating these insulin levels until you become more and more insulin resistant. So you have a candy bar again at 30, and you got to dump 6 units of insulin. And then you have a candy bar at 40, and you got to dump 12. All of a sudden it's doubled again. So you have all this insulin floating around your body. We're going to skip through a little bit of hormone here. I want to get to this illustration. So you add a blood level, you have all this elevated insulin levels floating around, and it's not letting, will my mouse come up? Okay, so awesome. So it's not, these are your fat cells, and it's not letting any of the fat out because the insulin is knocking the glucose back into these molecules. Okay, so what do we do at that point? We've decided that we've hit 40, we want to do something, and one of the recommended concepts is out there is eat less, move more, right? Which is a very antiquated concept and not very effective. Okay, so we eat less and move more, but we continue to eat what's considered a standard American diet, which is usually back to some of these foods, right? Which you can see on there have a high glycemic index. So go back to our, this is, now I call a good friend of mine, Tom Naughton, who wrote or did this movie Fathead. You guys ever seen that? He's a great guy. You guys should rent it. Buy it on Amazon. It's cheap. Anyway, so you have these elevated insulin levels because you're eating the same foods that increase your insulin levels, and you're already insulin resistant. You've lowered the calories, and you've decided to move more. Okay? But you have elevated insulin levels, so your body won't release this fat. So what then happens? You get hungry. Everybody here has heard the term work up an appetite, right? So you work up an appetite. I'm going to Pilates 3 times a week. I'm going to hot yoga. Got a membership at, I almost did it, the place that serves pizza once a week. And I'm getting on the treadmill, and I'm walking, 3-4 times a week, and I'm leaving and I'm hungry and I'm not losing any weight, but I'm eating I'm eating fewer calories, and it's like all natural, healthy whole grains. I'm eating my special cereal. And see, I can leave these names up here because this is Tom's slide. And it's not working. How come it's not working? Well, you're eating these foods that are keeping your insulin elevated. You're already insulin resistant because you've hammered the hell out of it over tons of years of eating cake in the break room because it's somebody's birthday again. And so what happens next? Your body is hungry. It's not getting the food. You've done a calorie. It's going to slow down your metabolism next. It's the only defense mechanism it has. You're doing more work. It needs the energy for the work. You're not feeding it, or you're feeding it the wrong things. So all of a sudden now it's slowing your metabolism down. And you've been going to the purple pizza serving place for a week, a month, a year, and it's not working. Your metabolism slows down, and then what happens? Vacation. I deserve it. I've been busting my butt. I've only lost 5 pounds anyway. You come back, you're 10 pounds heavier than when you started on Carb Fest. Okay? And that's a vicious, vicious cycle. And this is what we've been told by the professionals for years. Okay? So, what do I do? What do I do if I am very metabolically resistant? I've hammered the heck out of my metabolism. Well, that's where I find a lot of people. Okay, even people who aren't very successful on a natural human diet. And now don't get me wrong, I started with the natural human diet and have made great, great success. There's very good foods in there. And I didn't even go the natural, healthy, organic way in the beginning. I just did great at my local supermarket, okay? Because your body knows has a better idea what to do with bad meats, fruits, and vegetables than it does any type of grain or dairy. Okay, so then I found nutritional ketosis. Okay, so what is,
Before you switch over to the ketosis thing, do you have any data on the average sized person, average insulin response, the whole deal, how much of a carbohydrate load a person typically can ingest in a sitting before you have, like, say, spillover to triglycerides or fat storage?
Well, see, I have some, and there is some out there, but it's usually in a clinical setting, and I don't find that some of that clinical setting stuff is active to real world because some of the sugars react differently. Okay, so if you're a fructose hound,
Like no fructose, but typical, like a big bowl of spaghetti, or just any generic carb load, or
yeah, I know what you're getting at, and it's hard to pinpoint that, but there is some data on that. Email me, I'll send you some stuff. And as a matter of fact, it may be.
It'd be cool if they had one done on some, at least athletes.
Well,
even better strength athletes.
Have you ever seen I Run on Fat?
No.
Okay, I think he has some in there too, and we'll get to about the oxidative stresses of burning a lot of sugar. Remind me at the end to talk about athletes and high-carb diets and how they're dying earlier.
My dad drinks about 6 Coca-Colas a day. Like, I don't know how he's even surviving. When he gets desperate, he might fix a peanut butter or ham sandwich. That's between all the cigarettes.
Right.
But I've, demonstrated to him how much sugar he's taking in and how much fructose he's taking in, and explain this whole concept. He's, I don't worry about all that stuff.
How old is he?
He's 75.
Good luck.
Good luck.
He's in what I call he's in what I'd call the home stretch. I always tell myself I get to 75, I'm partying like a rock star. Because I've done all this hard work up until now. Okay, so switching over to what's called nutritional ketosis. Okay, so like I said, I want to take anything away from paleo. I'm not saying that you have to go paleo right to keto paleo and hammer it out. Keto paleo may be for that athlete that's looking for that added advantage, or someone who's really metabolically resistant and needs some help, someone who is type 2 diabetic and needs help reversing that. Okay, there's a lot of metabolic diseases that you can reverse going into a state of nutritional ketosis for a period of time, and a lot of times it's quick. You'll be surprised at how quick it really is. Okay, so what is it? It's a metabolic shift from switching your body's mimicry over from you burning a sugar molecule, and we talked about this a minute ago, to utilizing fat, ketones. And there's a couple of different ketones. There's acetoacetate, beta-hydroxybutyrate, and acetone. Actually, I need to update that slide. How do you get there? Okay, so you guys are familiar with the macromolecules that we mentioned, right? There's carbohydrates, there's protein, and there's fats, right? Okay, so a nutritionally planned ketogenic diet is usually less than 50 grams of carbohydrate a day, and this varies for everybody. If you're an athlete, I know some people that can stay in ketosis at 100 grams a day. Some people who time it right and they can do less. Some people who are very metabolically smashed have to keep it under 10 or 20 grams of carbohydrate a day. Okay? And I define my carbohydrate a day as total carbohydrate minus fiber. Okay? There are some other camps out there, and we talked about the 50 Shades of Paleo. We're getting different branches of the ketogenic world now. Some people say total carbohydrates, like Dr. Westman. I think he's on the total carbohydrate bandwagon now, and Dr. Adam Nally. Both really great resources, too. They have blogs and books. And some of us actually take away the total fiber and some of the sugar alcohols. Okay, if you're savvy in some of the sugar alcohols and you're familiar with them, like erythritol is one that pretty much passes through inertly, you can subtract that one out too. And just a real quick show of hands, how many people have downloaded Keto Check? Oh, I expected you, and I really expected you to have downloaded. Shame. We will have that downloaded before you leave.
Totally ready.
It's totally ready. Okay, so I developed an app, and I'm going to plug it right now real quick, called Keto Check, and it's great for your newbies. Okay, so you can take a nutrition label, and you can type in fats, carbohydrates, proteins, hit done, click enter, and it will tell you if it falls in that ketogenic pool. As you get more savvy, I've even allowed another option for it, so you can do total carbohydrates minus fiber, which no other app does that. And I've also done total carbohydrates minus fiber minus sugar alcohol. So once you get even a little more savvy, you can determine whether you're going to count that sugar alcohol or not. Like, I don't count erythritol, which is one of the ones that pass through pretty early, and I think sucralose is off most people's radar. I don't think it shows up at a blood level. Great app for you newbies, okay? And everybody who downloads it today, I'll give an extra something special for them on the way out the door, okay? Keto Check. It's on Google Play as well as the App Store. Okay, so we're keeping our protein moderate and our fat intake at about 60%. This is for people who are numbers driven, okay? People who need a place to start. People who like to know, I just need a place to start, Jamie. I'm so numbers driven. If I told you, no, just eat high fat diet, go on, a lot of people would lose track. I myself was a numbers guy too. You know, I work as an engineer sometimes by day, and I was a quality engineer for a while, so I like numbers and like to have a place to start. Now, do I shoot from the hip mostly? Pretty much. But I also recognize that there's a lot of people out there that need help, hence the reason I talk, hence the reason I developed this app, okay? So, a ketone, we talked about it, and we're just going to graze over this real quick, is a source of energy that your body uses to metabolize instead of the glucose, okay? So if you become keto adapted, you shift your macromolecules to under the 50 grams of carbohydrate a day, again, an approximation, you can, your body will start burning what's called ketones. And you won't have that elevated insulin level anymore. Remember how we talked about a lot of the foods that spike your insulin, keep your body from releasing the fat, cause all kinds of inflammation, inhibit recovery? That won't happen if you are on a ketogenic diet, or is less likely to happen, okay? Some of the things that you'll benefit from ketosis, and this is a lot of the things that appeal to me as an athlete. Less oxidative stress, okay? So the whole metabolic pathway causes less oxidative stress. Your body will actually produce less CO2 when it's burning calories. Your pH will drop. You'll be less acidic. The chemical that mobilizes ketone bodies back to the liver is monocarbolic acid. It's also the tool that takes lactic acid back to the liver. okay, and metabolize it. So you'll have that less oxidative stress, so you won't feel as sore. You know, if you had a really good workout and I'm sore, if you're in a state of nutritional ketosis, you'll notice that goes back a lot. And the longer you stay in nutritional ketosis, the more benefits you'll have from it. So to be fully keto adapted,
Sure, I understand that. So if you are in it, when you work out, you're sore?
less sore because you have less oxidative stress. Sorry if I'm stumbling through that. The longer you stay in nutritional ketosis, the higher all this stuff comes up and the more metabolically superior you will be in that environment, okay? I have noticed somewhere in the neighborhood of the 6 to 7 month mark, there's another shift that actually I call super ketogenic now, or superhero mode. Once I hit that 6 month mark of being fat adapted for that long, I feel like an action figure, okay? My workouts change significantly, my recovery or lack of oxidative stress is huge, it's way different, okay? My strength gains go up, okay? So if you comb through my blog, one of my blog posts that I put on there is the first time I did this was preparing for a world competition in powerlifting. And after competing, there was, usually you're just wrecked for, a week or so. I felt nothing. The recovery was phenomenal. It was just that much better because there was that less oxidative stress. And I've done that year after year ever since then. Getting to that 6 month mark though, which few people do, it's hard to explain. There's another guy that I met in Germany who trains athletes, Gasper Gram, another great athlete. He's noticed the same thing too, but he says it takes him about 8 months. But he keeps dairy in his diet, so we haven't determined if that's the key factor or not. And I was fortunate enough while being in Colorado this year at the Low Carb Conference, got to talk with Dr. Stephen Finney, and I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with him, but he's kind of like the guru of this. He thinks that there's something that goes on at a brain level that kind of says, okay, we're staying in this metabolic state, let's open the floodgates and give ourselves the full potential. And not a lot of research done there at all other than theories. So stay tuned for that, something I hope to work on. You burn more stored fat, and why do you think that is? You don't have those elevated insulin levels, so your body can release it, okay? You carry less water. The whole metabolic pathway, hence keep producing less CO2. Your body needs less H2O for the whole metabolic process. So right off the bat, a lot of times when you switch over to ketogenic diet, it's not uncommon to lose 4 or 5 pounds right now, okay? That's a couple of things. If you're going from a standard American diet right to a keto paleo diet, first it's the evacuation of all the grains that your body's holding on to, and then it's the lack of carbohydrate. Your body holds less water, okay? So that's what I call the honeymoon period, so don't get crazy excited that you're going to lose 5 pounds every week after you start this. Keep that in mind. I get a lot of people, I mean, it's cool, don't get me wrong. You start ketogenic and you see that instant reward like that and you're happy, but 1 to 2 pounds a month, the reality is really good. This is probably legit fat loss.
I'm sorry, did you say a month?
Yeah.
We've just been brainwashed into thinking it happens so much faster.
Yeah, and you can do emaciation diets and stuff like that you'll see numbers drop. 1 to 2 pounds a month is legit.
I actually just had this discussion with my doctor last week.
Yeah.
And he said, how much do you want to lose? And I told him, like 30 pounds. He goes, how long do you want to lose that? I said, probably over the next year. He goes, thank God you said that. If you had said anything else, then I'd have beat you.
Yeah. Let's have real expectations. So if I was back to Fred Flintstone looking Jamie, and I was 32, it took me 32 years to look like that. To think it's going to change in 3 months is not reality, okay? And we're going to talk about being successful with this. Okay, here's just some more stats, and I'm going to just wrap up a little bit, and we're going to get to some of the advantages and how to be successful with this, because I think I've sold everybody at this point. Okay. Some of the advantages of being ketosis: steady state fuel source. I did skip a slide that I want to show. The idea of this truck running out of gas is kind of a head scratcher, right? Because it's hauling a whole tank full of gas. But in reality, when you're an athlete and you're on that sugar molecule, you ever heard that term bonking? Okay. What actually happens is your body can only hold about 2,000 calories of sugar. That's in your liver and well-developed muscle cells and stuff like that. Okay. So it takes no time to burn through 2,000 calories of sugar if you're a marathon runner, okay? And one of the processes they go through that when they're racing or Ironman and stuff like that is they'll bonk. And what's happening then is they'll get really lightheaded and woozy, and that's their body trying to switch over to nutritional ketosis on the fly, okay? Which is where they get that brain fog and that bonk and stuff like that. If you start that race out keto adapted or fat adapted, that will never happen. I have gone 3 and 4 hour workouts in state of nutritional ketosis, walked away and know that I could do the same exact thing that next hour because there's less oxidative stress. I'm not running out of energy. I don't have to refill glycogen stores. It just feels that good, especially when I get to that 6-month mark. Okay, that's huge. This is out of actually Stephen Finney and Jeff Volek's book, Low Carbohydrate, Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Performance. If you haven't read that book and you're an athlete and that's why you're here, great book. Not too sciencey. The one before it's pretty sciencey. This one kind of just gives you what you need. They've done a lot of research, and you can kind of see where the where some of the data is coming from. Look at Finney's. This is in 1983. All this research was done already, 30 years ago. But we were so programmed with the lipid hypothesis, the high-fat diets are bad for you, that it's just been an uphill battle. Okay. We talked about, so this is the first thing that people are going to throw in your face. I'm going to try a ketogenic diet, and everyone, it's bad for you. Okay. There's a difference between being in ketosis and ketoacidosis. Okay. Ketosis or nutritional ketosis is what we talked about. You shift your metabolic pathway so that you're utilizing fat or ketone bodies as your energy source. Ketoacidosis is a condition that type 1 diabetics can get. Okay, so if you're doing blood tests and you're in the range of 0.5 to 5 millimolars of ketones at a blood level, okay, that would be your standard nutritional ketosis. A little over that, maybe between 5 to 10, might be in a starvation mode. Ketoacidosis is something that type 1 diabetics get where their body doesn't produce insulin, right? So they get an elevated ketone level to something like 25 millimolar or 50 millimolar. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, they sell blood meters to check this at a blood level. Something that goes, it's like comparing a light mist to a tsunami as far as blood level ketones is concerned. And actually the real fear isn't necessarily that the ketones are that high, is that sugar and ketones are high at the same time. Okay. And at that point they have to administer some insulin. Okay. Okay, so this is another one that has a lot of buzz going about it. Okay. And we're not going to talk a lot about it because there's not a ton of research on it, but I know for a fact that there's a lot of papers about to be released. Okay, so is ketosis a cancer killer? Those of you guys who've been Googling a lot of stuff about nutritional ketosis, but there's a lot of forms of cancers. Now that's a big broad brush statement because there's lots of cancers, right? There's a lot of forms of cancers that will really, really benefit about being in a state of nutritional ketosis. And one of the things that I feel is a smoking gun on this is the PET scan. Have you guys ever heard that term, PET scan? So in a nutshell, and I'm really breaking this down here, is what they're looking for when they're doing a PET scan is an upregulation of glucose metabolism at a cellular level. Okay, glucose is sugar. So the idea is right now that if you remove the glucose, you kill the cancer. Because cancer is a modern disease that only evolved through this sugar metabolism. So the idea is that if you remove glucose from this scenario, put your body in a state of nutritional ketosis, run on ketone bodies, that the cancer will die. Is there a lot of science on this yet? No. Have I seen a lot of amazing things in this arena? Oh yeah. I've seen some pictures and diagrams and of masses and stuff like that they have done nothing but change the diet and it almost be completely eliminated. Okay? And that's all I'm saying on this. There's a lot of research to be coming. I don't want to say again, back to my disclaimer in the beginning. Jamie said I'm ketogenic, I wouldn't die. No. This is just a little preview of what's to come. Okay? What about my cholesterol? I'm eating this high-fat diet. You know, is it going to affect my cholesterol? My doctor's, worried about my total cholesterol count. The first thing is, no. It's not going to affect that. As a matter of fact, there is no direct correlation between a total cholesterol count and any type of coronary heart disease. Okay? It has never been the truth at any point in time. There was a guy by the name of Ansel Keys in the 50s who did this bogus study that he removed a bunch of data. He did the complete thing that you were told not to do in lab class, published it, got the government to buy into it, spent billions of dollars, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of people would have had to eat crow to reverse it, and here we are, 2016, and it finally got reversed in 2015. There's no direct correlation between any type of total cholesterol count and coronary heart disease. Okay? As a matter of fact, that cholesterol molecule is so important that almost every cell in our body can make it. Okay? All our sex hormones are on a cholesterol chassis. Let's see what else. It's a great repair molecule. You hear about the atherosclerosis, and we're going to talk about that again. That's a patching mechanism of cholesterol. So this is the story they told us, right? There's Tom again in the corner. They have good guys and bad guys. And then that's not really even the case. The LDL and HDL cholesterol are actually lipoproteins. It's not the cholesterol itself. They're the carrying molecules of it. Okay, so LDL takes it out into the system. HDL brings it back. Okay, so is it good to have a good ratio of those two? Yeah, but you're actually measuring lipoproteins. Okay, you're not actually measuring a cholesterol molecule. Okay. So what happens is when you get artery damage, you can have your HDL goes out and does the repair site, and then your LDL goes out and takes the cholesterol to the repair site, does the patch, brings it back. Where you do run into trouble is LDL density particle size. Okay, that's another test that people are starting to get on board with. If you have small, dense LDL particle size cholesterol, that's a bad thing. That's an oxidated state of cholesterol, and that will create issues sub to the arterial walls right in here, okay, because it's an oxidative and it passed through that barrier. And how do you think those are produced, or how do you think we get a small, dense LDL cholesterol? Grain-based diets. Okay, that's one of the big indicators and stuff like that. I lost my train of thought there again for a second. Hang on, I get ahead of myself. I'm excited to talk about the end of this, though. Artery damage. Okay, so you have that glycocalyx liner that I was telling you about on there. You have a disruption in it. Your body produces cholesterol to do the repair. Small, dense is bad. Penetrates and creates a plaque. You get the atherosclerosis, but which actually atherosclerosis, that patch that it puts on there, is a natural thing. Where you run into problem is when you eat these wheat-based diets, your body produces or it contains another molecule called WGA. And what that actually does is weakens that plaque and busts it up. And when that adhesion busts, or that scab busts, then it goes downstream and gets caught in a smaller capillary bed. Okay, because arteries can actually expand and contract. Okay, and the plaquing is something there to repair. So what are some things that actually do cause stress to the arteries and cause those cracks? Smoking, elevated blood sugar, stress can cause a lot of inflammation, damage your arteries and lead to heart disease. So those are some of the other things you really need to look out for when you're looking for things. What are some of the tests that I can have done? So my doctor's tested me for my total cholesterol count. You just told me it's not worth anything, but people are still having heart attacks. What are some indicators of that I should be getting checked for? Homocysteine levels, C-reactive proteins are good indicators of inflammation. Your CoQ10 levels. Back again to insulin. Insulin's a huge inflammatory chemical. elevated insulin levels, and get your LDL particle size checked. Okay, that's one that you might be resistant to. And I didn't say this, but a lot of times you can get your insurance to cover it if you say, Grandma, Grandpa, Dad, everybody died of heart disease. That would be your first pass on that indicator. All right, I've covered a lot of information. And again, I want to point out the two different ideologies again, okay? Paleo is basically a grocery list of an evolutionary grocery store. Anything you could hunt or gather, okay? Anything that you could previously eat raw, okay? And I'm not talking about factory meat, because obviously you wouldn't want to do that, but anything that you could previously eat raw would probably be on that hunter-gatherer diet, okay? Nutritional ketosis, or a ketogenic diet, is when you manipulate those macros I talked about to 10 to 5 grams of carbohydrate a day. Again, that's going to depend on what kind of insulin or metabolically resistant you are. How much protein you take in as well. And I say per meal, I don't say per day, because there's another process that we have in our bodies called gluconeogenesis that will actually take that protein and convert it to sugar. Some people are really respondent to that, and they have to keep their protein somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe even 15 to 25 grams per meal. I'm actually really lucky. I can hammer a lot of protein and not worry about that and stay in ketosis. 60% of your diet from fat. Again, there's a really great app out there to help get you started. What would that be called? Keto Check. Yay! Help me at least pay back what I spent on it. A great way for your newbies. And you know what? I made it so if you guys download it, we'll play with it a little bit, or I'll show you on my phone before you leave. You can just come up after Holly talks. And we'll plug in some nutrition labels and I'll show you. And I didn't make it a barcode scanner because for the newbies, I want people to get used to reading nutrition labels. Okay? So what's right for me? There's a lot of diets out there. And a paleo-style diet is lower in carbohydrate. And I was very, very successful being on a lower carbohydrate diet. Coming from an Italian background, there was a lot of pasta and lasagna, right? Okay, so that probably didn't do me any favors over time. It was hard to reel that in. But you find your way, spaghetti squashes and marinaras without sugar, that kind of thing. If you go a standard ketogenic diet and don't want to add the paleo style to it, and you keep your dairy in there and it doesn't seem to affect your weight loss or your allergies or anything metabolically with you, you can go very ketogenic and make like what I call porchos. I have these recipes on my blog where I basically make a pork rind nacho, okay, and I use that as a treat because it won't knock me out of ketosis. Eat it every day for dinner? No, because calories at some point are still going to count. But if you are about to go off the bandwagon versus have some porchos or a keto pizza, or you buy an ice cream maker and you make keto ice cream, do that, okay? There's a lot of companies out there starting to come out with keto treats, okay? So Quest Nutrition has made some peanut butter cups and stuff like that are delicious. They have a bunch of stuff in the wing that's coming out. Adapt bars. Eric Westman, he's another proponent of that. The Finkles, they have Adapt chocolate bars. They have fat coffee shots, stuff like that. Those are great things. Low carb options are great things too. And we have some samples out there that I can hand you as we go out the door. Okay? So you got to kind of find out what's right for you. If you're an all or nothing personality, go that route. If you think you're very sugar addicted, go that route. Because we've all been down that road before. I've done so good, I've done so good, I've done so good. I had that one treat, bam, done. What does that sound like to you? Any alcoholic or junkie or anything like that, you may in fact need to treat that sugar addiction with that type of respect. You may be in that camp. I'm in that camp. If I have a whatever, name that treat, it's on. I mean, I can't. I'm drooling right now. That fat guy that was in that picture is drooling, okay? I'm in that camp. I tried to do it. I used to do 10 months of nutritional ketosis, January to my birthday, which is Halloween. and then try to go standard paleo for those 2 months. First year I was good. Second year I was worse. Third year, it was a carb frenzy. I couldn't stop. I got 11 days into it and said, I got to stop, because it became to the point, because I understand the biology now like you guys do. What's for dinner, Jamie? I don't know, F it, donuts. It's just going to be sugar anyway. That's where I got. That's where I got. And now I know I can't. Unless I want to go down that road, you know. A lot of people argue that it's not discipline. There is a big part of this that's discipline. Okay, so I did a blog, Periscope, not too long ago about going to a water park. Okay, there's all kinds of psychological issues with going to a water park. I'm on vacation. I deserve it. You need a treat. I've always gone to Ludington and gone to the House of Flavors. All these things that are very similar to that alcoholic drug addict pathway. I have to remove myself from those friends. Why? Because we always go out and do X. Now, that could be from the bar, or that could be with your donut bar buddy. Very similar. I can't hardly go to the office anymore because the break room is a perpetual cake buffet. It's always treats in there, okay? So some of your useful tools, I'm going to bounce back and forth here, trying to help you guys. It just comes. That's that blood meter I was talking about in the beginning. If you want to try to be ketogenic, those strips are expensive, okay? But you'll be able to figure out a blood level ketone level, okay? There's P strips. P strips work for the first 2 or 3 weeks, but as soon as your body recognizes ketones as a fuel source, it'll start holding on to them. So you'll be like, I'm very diligent about what I'm doing, Jamie. All of a sudden, I got no ketones on my P sticks. I'm going to have cake. Your body recognizes it a fuel source and your kidneys stop dumping them as much. You might go down to trace ketones. The Ketonics breath meter. I love this thing. It takes a little practice. And anybody who's interested in one, I can get a discount on them because I had this seminar. Michelle Lundell, the engineer, gave me a discount code. I can get at least 10% off, and if we order together, we can save on shipping. Okay? And my app, Keto Check, is great for beginners, okay, to get started. This is another thing that we just kind of talked about. You know, those habits. That's exactly it. Don't keep the stuff in the house anymore. Don't walk through that break room, or run through the break room if you have to, almost like it's a fire. There's some habits you're going to have to change, you know. This is a little meme I made, and it's got some vulgarity in it, so I apologize. And I find myself saying this all the time, especially at parties and birthdays, and these are your friends that'll fight you on this, okay? So you start going down that pathway. What's your name? Diana. Diana made a decision she's going to go back to school and better herself. Everyone would pat her on the back. Diana says, I'm going to start eating healthy and lose some weight. Everyone will pat her on the back until she gets to that break room. And they'll say, Diana, oh, come on, you're doing so good, you live a little. All of a sudden, this peer pressure comes out of nowhere. It's the same as her trying to better herself, go back to school, but no one says, hey, don't study, come on, let's go to the bar. She said, no, I got to study. Like, oh, that's great, go ahead, study, get your A. But they want to, for some reason, they want to derail you on the treats. So this has actually been a rant that I have said. And it's been a rant of mine. A friend of mine has said, screamed before. I don't eat that shit because I don't want to look like shit. I don't want to feel like shit or have my health be for shit. So don't tell me to live a little. Don't tell me to only live once. That's the reason I'm not eating that shit. Yeah, I've had it before. I'll have it again. But I've got goals right now. And guess what? Those goals don't involve that shit. If you can remember that, or a part of that, or at least that last line, because saying yes to that donut in the break room is saying no to your goals. And there's no 99-cent tub of ice cream worth wrecking your health and your goals for. Okay, that's really what you're doing. When you say, yeah, I'll have one, you just said no to what you've worked 6 weeks at the Barney gym on that treadmill, you know, whatever goals you've made. And for those of you that are really metabolic resistant, It's hard for whoever to lose 5 pounds. It's taking you 3 months to lose 5 pounds. And you're going to throw it away on 99-cent donut? No, you got to. And is it fair that some, like say Sean is very insulin respondent and Jamie's not? No. Sorry, it's not. But guess what? It's what you were dealt. So fight and claw and say that. I got goals right now. And guess what? Those goals don't involve that. And yeah, it's a head game. And yeah, getting up in the morning and do the workout's a head game. You lay in there like, oh, I've been so good. And then you reach down and grab some fat on your side and go, not good enough. And you get up and go, you know. Being prepared on a ketogenic diet. Now, I'm an outside salesman. I found my way to do this on the road a lot. But this is a big part of it too, convenience. Now, yes, you can get a salad through the drive-thru, but no one does it. Because at that point, you're starving, and you're going to be driving on the highway at 80, and you want a McMuffin. You know, you got to find treats and ways. I'm sorry, you're going to have to change some habits. You might have to pack a lunch now and again. You might have to pack your lunch when you're going to a party, as rude as that seems. Get used to going to restaurants and ordering a hamburger without the bun. What is it? Bagger Dave's does I mentioned a name in a positive light, does a burger bowl. They'll put it on a salad for you. You can have a burger made however you want, on a salad, minus the bun, kind of thing. Learn those tricks. Mongolian barbecues are awesome. Why? Because you can hand them a bowl of meat and vegetables and say, cook it. You know, some of those Chinese buffets have those Mongolian barbecues in the back. Great resource. Jimmy John's Unwich has pulled my butt out of the fire a couple of times, you know. Don't combine the both, meaning this is referring to a ketogenic diet. Don't start out with bacon and eggs, make it to lunch with a turkey breast and broccoli, and have pizza for dinner. At another, you get, at the end of the day, you get tired and whatever. Because now you're mixing a high-fat diet with a high-carb diet, and that hasn't done America very good, okay? You can see at the bottom there, did you guys ever see the cartoon WALL-E? I stole that. I stole this image on the bottom from WALL-E. And the main producer of that scenario was a company called By and Large. You remember that? Oh, he pulled me. Oh, thanks, I'm sorry. Sorry, all you periscopers that can't see me because it's dark, but are hopefully listening, all 4 of you. There has to be some changes made in our environment. We're almost going to have to, you know, 415 million people have type 2 diabetes right now, and that's completely reversible by diet. There has to be some changes made almost at like we did with cigarettes. You know, we have to stop advertising. Definitely have to get some of those sugary cereal ads off the kid channels. You know, you can't walk 10 feet into one of the popular grocery stores without vending machines right off the bat. Okay, all right, I'm going grocery shopping. I can't wait to aisle 8 to get a candy bar. They're right there. Every single register has poppin' candy. I mean, when Big Jamie used to think that could be lunch. I'd have a couple of candy bars and a slushie. And that's the way I just thought, you know. I'm not saying get rid of it. I'm saying maybe keep candy in aisle 8 where it belongs, not at every single register. Maybe not, you know, pop at every single register kind of thing. I mean, you can't even go to some of the department stores and they got chocolate there. And it's just a clothing store, you know. That one more sale, you know. We're giving a lot of things a pass. I don't know if you guys heard that term, dad bod. Okay, so you remember the show Married with Children? He was his heyday in high school. Now we've even given, at that level, at these teens and early college guys, this dad bod mentality where they look like they have this 40-year-old body of the past. You know, we're giving everything a pass. In reality, we're giving people a pass to be unhealthy. It needs to be reeled back in at some level. And no, I'm not a big fan of government and getting involved, but at some point we might have to vote it out. You know, it's becoming that much of a problem. It's going to crash our healthcare system. I have printed these up for you guys. Sample day in my life of a standard paleo diet. They're out front. I also create an eat, don't eat sheet for you guys. That's basically a grocery list for paleo. Okay. And I also did a sample keto diet for you guys that's out front, if you guys haven't got it already. Please go to my webpage. Please download Keto Check. I know I gave you a ton of information, and I think I still talked for 2 hours, even though we started late. So that being said, we'll probably do some questions after Holly speaks. We're going to take a 5-10 minute break. What time is it right now? It's about 2:20. You want to just come back for about 2:30ish. That way you guys can run downstairs, get a drink, get a coffee, go to the bathroom, and then we'll start approximately 2:30 for Holly.
Where are the candy bars?
Straight downstairs, get yourself a candy bar.